out. Stay centered.
Welcome to the debate. Our focus today is quite interesting. It's on Christina's gentle no-buy challenge. Now, this came about after a really massive personal achievement for her, paying off over $120,000 in student debt. I mean, quite something.
Huge. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, having tackled that huge financial mountain, she then turned her focus inward, looking at the sort of habitual, maybe even unconscious consumption patterns that she noticed were creeping back into her life, even after becoming debt-free.
Right. The lifestyle creep, even after such discipline.
Precisely. So the central puzzle, the real question for us today that emerges from her experience is about, well, causality and sustainability, really. What was the real engine driving the success of this challenge? Especially that feeling of profound peacefulness she reported. Was it the deliberate psychological pivot, towards self-compassion and this idea of gentle accountability? Or was it more about the rigorous implementation of concrete behavioral habits, the replacement activities, the rules structure?
A classic mind versus matter debate, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And look, I'm going to argue that the fundamental shift in mindset, that move away from self-punishment towards establishing a deep, non-judgmental self-trust, that was the crucial enabling factor. The behavior followed the belief, essentially.
Okay, I see why you think that. And I definitely agree that the psychological piece is the goal, the ultimate indicator of success here. However, I come at it from a slightly different angle. I'm going to argue that the psychological shift, that piece, was actually the result of successful action. The new structure she put in place and those specific behavioral replacement activities, that was the essential scaffolding. I mean, they provided the necessary framework that allowed the mind to quiet down. Structure enables reliable action, right? And it's that reliable action that generates the very trust you're talking about.
That's a very clear distinction you're drawing, internal foundation versus external scaffolding. But if we look closely at the material, the emphasis on mindset is, it's almost overwhelming. She explicitly contrasts this challenge with her failed attempts back in 2019. And the key difference she identifies, it's the transformation of her inner monologue.
Okay.
She realized that self-discipline achieved through sort of harsh criticism, that you can't have this voice, it inevitably leads to rebellion and self-sabotage. That's a really common pattern, isn't it, for anyone trying these big behavioral changes?
Yeah, the restriction bench cycle.
Exactly. The material states very clearly that kindness, not punishment, was the key to making this her most peaceful and effortless no-buy yet. It even formalized this idea, saying pretty unequivocally, mindset outweighs rules. The goal wasn't just stopping the spending, it was about stopping the obsession around spending and achieving that calm detachment by week 3 where the intense impulse just faded. That feels like a purely psychological breakthrough to me. That emotional distance from the urge is the victory over desire, and it seems achieved through compassion.
Right. I get the power of that internal narrative. I really do. But I think that peacefulness was earned. It was earned through the grind, through the actions. The psychological piece, I'd argue, was actually the reward for successfully implementing the behavioral changes, not the root cause. We have direct evidence in the text that the first 2 weeks were explicitly described as the hardest. They were dominated by the very behavioral urges she was trying to escape. The boredom shopping, the aimless TikTok scrolling, that feeling of a huge void where consumption used to be.
Okay, the initial struggle was real, yes.
So this suggests the initial problem wasn't just a self-critical mindset. It was also, perhaps more pragmatically, a schedule management problem, a time-filling problem. And the success that followed, it relied entirely, it seems, on filling that void with structured, measurable, and importantly, mandatory replacement behaviors. We're talking about the daily Pilates sessions. She even names the specific YouTube channel, Move with Nicole, consistent use of the Copilot fitness app, and the active physical labor involved in reorganizing her wardrobe in her home. These actions are structural, they're time-consuming, and they're designed to literally occupy the hours previously lost to browsing and buying. That calm detachment she felt in week 3, It only arrived after 2 weeks of successfully executing this rigorous behavioral replacement plan. The architecture of her day changed first.
Okay, let's dig into that causality a bit more, especially around impulse control, because I think this is where the mindset piece really proved its immediate worth. Think about that moment she faced genuine temptation, the Tibby sale in early January. That's, peak fear of missing out territory for anyone interested in style.
Right, a real test.
Exactly. And her strategy hinged directly on lesson 2. Delay gratification, don't deny it. Now, this capacity to delay, what she calls wish listing, I believe required a pre-existing foundation of self-trust. Trust that had to be established by that compassionate mindset first. She needed to trust, deep down, that postponing the purchase wouldn't mean permanent loss or self-deprivation. The fact that later on the external evidence validated her choice, those same items got discounted even further in February, that just confirmed the wisdom of the initial internal decision. It didn't create the restraint mechanism itself. The willingness to delay, I think, stemmed from that internal shift, the realization she was acting out of self-respect, not just self-denial.
I'm sorry, but I just don't quite buy that the willingness was purely internal, springing fully formed from this mindset shift. That restraint, that willingness you describe, it feels like it was built and reinforced by a structural tactic. Wish listing, let's be clear, it's a specific cognitive behavioral tool. It's designed to manage an acute symptom, that feeling of urgency around an impulse purchase. It structurally delays the decision. It forces a cooling off period until the emotional heat, the desire, subsides.
But the choice to use the tool comes from mindset.
Well, yes, but if the underlying mindset shift was truly sufficient on its own, if she simply had this deep inherent self-trust already baked in, why did she even need a codified tactic like wish listing? Why not just say, I trust myself, I don't need this right now? I'd suggest that the successful, measurable deployment of this tactic, the actual behavior of delaying and listing, is what systematically built that self-trust over time. Every time she successfully delayed, it was like empirical evidence chipping away at the inner critic, proving she was capable of responsible action. That's what quieted the internal noise. So the structure, the tactic, provided the environment where self-trust could actually grow. It wasn't some pre-installed serene mindset just guiding the ship from day one. And furthermore, let's go back to the sheer force needed to replace habits. We have to acknowledge how common this problem is. Consumption filling time. This isn't just philosophical, it's like behavioral physics almost. If the success hinges, as she says on lesson 3, replace old habits with meaningful activities, then those activities must be concrete enough, engaging enough to absorb the energy previously poured into consumption.
Okay.
Stopping spending creates this huge vacuum, right? Both in time and emotionally. If you don't instantly replace staring at a screen shopping with something equally mandatory and engaging, the vacuum just pulls the old habits back in. It wins. That's why the daily Pilates, the strict use of fitness apps, the active physical reorganization, these weren't just suggestions. They sound like mandatory, non-shopping forms of, physical and mental labor. They're health-focused actions occupying her time, her body, her mind. Without these specific structured activities, that psychological vacuum created by the no-buy, it would inevitably have been filled by the old easy habits, regardless of how kindly she was trying to talk to herself.
That's a compelling argument about the physics of time management, I grant you that, but I think it risks missing the deeper psychological component of sustainability. Think about it. Many people adopt new, rigorous behavioral habits, right? They start training for a marathon, they go on extreme diets, whatever it is, but they haven't achieved that internal transformation.
And they often burn out. Yeah.
Exactly. They burn out or they relapse precisely because the underlying, often anxious, relationship with desire hasn't fundamentally shifted. They're still operating from a place of, I should do this, which, let's face it, often feels like punishment, rather than I deserve this transformation, which stems from compassion. Christina's key success, the thing that seemed different this time, was achieving serenity. It was the quieting of that inner critic. It was the fundamental shift in her self-talk, moving away from the harsh, "you can't have this, you fool," which defined her previous failed attempts, to the compassionate, forward-looking, "Okay, you'll revisit this later, and we'll see if it still aligns with our values." That psychological rewiring addresses the root cause of the consumption, which is so often about internal distress or needing external validation. The structure provides the routine, yes, absolutely. But the mindset provides the long-term emotional capacity to endure that routine, to integrate it without ultimately sabotaging it. That feels like why her past attempts, even if they might have had some structure, ultimately failed.
Let's examine maybe the trickiest part of any no-buy challenge, navigating necessary exceptions. Because the material is very transparent here. She talks about several quite expensive conscious expenditures. There was, $72 on takeout sushi, $107 on getting her nails done, and notably that $238 luxury style book, The Creative Pragmatist. Now, these aren't necessities in the, food and shelter sense, but they were justified. They were categorized as value-aligned spending.
Consciously chosen.
Right. But this, to me, demonstrates that the rules and the structural framework were still paramount. These significant discretionary expenses needed precise, predetermined boundaries and definitions within the challenge framework itself. To prevent the whole thing from collapsing internally, the structure essentially provided authorized outlets like little release valves, managing the pressure cooker, without clear behavioral definitions distinguishing, say, essential items like the $187 she spent on hair care replacements or that unavoidable $951 pharmacist license renewal from the prohibited impulse buys. She would have faced massive internal confusion. And that confusion is the perfect breeding ground for the very self-sabotage she managed to avoid this time. So the structure didn't just prevent impulse buys, it managed the inevitable desire for some spending by creating these authorized loopholes, if you will.
That's an interesting point. Loophole is maybe a strong word, but I see the mechanism. Though I would frame it differently. The very ability to distinguish between a frivolous impulse purchase and a value-aligned one, like the style book, isn't that the definition of mature decision-making? And isn't that rooted in an already established mindset, rather than just blindly adhering to an external rule?
Possibly.
Think about it. If she were merely following a constrained framework, wouldn't those exceptions have felt like cheating? Or wouldn't they have triggered renewed guilt? Instead, she consciously categorized the style book as an educational resource, something that actively supported her longer-term goal of intentional style. The $951 license renewal is just a non-negotiable professional cost. The crucial step here, for me, is that these expenses were not followed by that old cycle of shame. The true victory is the transformation of spending itself from being a source of guilt and punishment into becoming an act of alignment with her values. So I'd argue, the rules didn't prevent the rebellion. The newly acquired self-compassion did, by allowing her to internalize the boundaries and make conscious, value-driven choices within them. That's why restriction could feel like freedom, because the underlying psychological relationship with desire had been fundamentally restructured first.
We do need to remember the specific context here, though. As you said at the start, she had just paid off this massive six-figure debt. The financial pressure must have been immense for years. Now she's trying to avoid immediately letting lifestyle inflation just consume all that newly earned freedom. The structure, the Pilates, the fitness apps, the organizing, it gave her tangible, physical proof day after day that she could transfer the discipline she learned during debt repayment into living intentionally now.
A transfer of skills, perhaps.
Exactly. And if we look at the core of Lesson 3, replace old habits with meaningful activities. The meaning wasn't just abstract or philosophical. It was concrete. It was bodily. The feeling of physical competence, of strength, from doing daily Pilates was likely a very tangible replacement for the dopamine hit of clicking buy now. This, for me, strongly suggests that the successful replacement behavior paved the way for the feeling of peace. She didn't just magically feel peaceful and then decide to start working out rigorously. She worked out, she filled the behavioral void, And then that allowed the peacefulness to actually emerge and take root. The structure was the engine generating the self-trust she needed to move forward.
And yet that same logic, that same engine, seemingly failed her back in 2019. She likely tried some structured activities then too, wouldn't you think? People usually do. The crucial difference, the thing that allowed the structure to actually hold this time, feels like it has to be the emotional resilience provided by that shift in self-talk. We can't really divorce the success from the explicitly stated goal, gentle accountability. When she felt the urge to buy things, the internal conversation changed. It wasn't, "You're stupid for wanting this anymore." It was, "Okay, it's okay to want this, but let's just pause. Let's check in with future Christina and see if this aligns." That ability to pause and to communicate internally with kindness, that required the compassionate mindset as a foundation. It provided the necessary psychological safety net. Without that net, the first inevitable slip-up, maybe skipping a day of Pilates or facing a moment of intense boredom and almost clicking buy, would likely have triggered the old punitive cycle and led straight to a full relapse. The mindset ensured the behavioral structure was treated as a tool for health and growth, not as another weapon for self-flagellation.
It's clear we're viewing these components through slightly different causal lenses, definitely. But, both lenses really highlight a deep engagement with the source material here. I do maintain my position, though. The structure, the explicit replacement behaviors, they feel like the necessary preconditions for any enduring psychological change. That serene mindset she achieved, I see it as the earned reward for successfully implementing the new architecture of her daily life. The success was built brick by behavioral brick on specific physical actions like the daily Pilates, like the structured delay tactics, which demonstrably broke the consumption cycle. And in doing so, they proved to her, empirically, that habits can successfully enable self-trust.
And I still maintain that the psychological transformation, that conscious move to gentle accountability and the definitive quieting of the inner critic was the necessary foundation. It was the fertile ground upon which those replacement habits could finally take root and, crucially, sustain themselves long-term. True, lasting change, I believe, stems from that kindness and self-respect. It transforms the relationship with desire so completely that restriction, paradoxically perhaps, is genuinely experienced as freedom. The behavioral structure was vital, yes, but it could only work this time because the internal landscape had been prepared for it.
Well, we certainly agree that this journey fostered some profound self-awareness and gratitude, didn't it? Moving far beyond just basic financial restriction into something much more like intentional living.
Absolutely. Our debate today really just illuminates that complex interplay, doesn't it, between the internal breakthroughs and the external behavioral scaffolding that's probably required to support them.
Yeah, and the source material is incredibly rich in demonstrating how these two dimensions, mindset and behavior, really have to interact to sustain discipline in the long run. It certainly offers much more to explore in how we all manage desire and financial freedom.
Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're shifting our focus a bit, looking inwards, you could say. We're tackling the really personal challenge of, dealing with modern consumerism, how we buy, why we buy.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Totally. We're going deep into the psychology, the mechanics of something called a no-buy challenge.
Right.
But, and this is important, this isn't the kind of story you might expect. It's not about someone in deep financial trouble.
No, not at all. It's more about intentionality, like a detox.
Yeah.
A deliberate step back from just consuming too much.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive, right? We've got these really detailed notes from someone, Christina, who did this for a month successfully.
Yeah. And the goal isn't just to list her rules. We want to pull out the psychological insights, the practical steps she took.
Understand the mindset. That's the key thing we're after.
Yeah.
How did that shift actually happen for her? How did it turn from restriction into something rewarding?
And the context, like you said, is pretty unusual. It really sets the stage.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because usually when you hear no-buy challenge, you think tight budgets, maybe? Debt?
Forced austerity, yeah. People scraping by.
But Christina, she started this after hitting this enormous financial goal.
Huge. She just paid off over, was it $120,000 in student loans?
Incredible. And she just had her first totally debt-free year, 2022?
So this wasn't about needing to save money necessarily. It was a proactive choice made from a place of, well, financial stability.
Yeah, she had the money, she had the freedom, but she saw this potential pitfall, didn't she?
The rebound effect.
Right. You work so hard to achieve something, pay off the debt, and then it's like, okay, now I can relax. Now I can buy things.
And that relaxation can slowly, creep back into old habits or just become a new habit of easy spending.
So she wanted to stop that slide before it really started. Get back to a sense of gratitude, maybe, grounding.
That seems to be it, preventing the drift back into just casual overconsumption.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How do you actually get to that place she talked about later? That calm detachment from wanting stuff?
Well, the journey there, it seems, started with a really fundamental shift in how she approached self-discipline.
Okay.
Which brings us nicely into our first main section, looking at how restraint evolved for her, moving away from self-punishment towards something more compassionate.
Right. So what was the trigger? She paid off the debt, felt good, maybe started spending a bit more freely.
Seems like it. She described it as allowing herself more indulgence, more casual buys. And she realized that balance she'd worked so hard for was starting to tilt. So the challenge was a conscious choice, hitting reset before those easy spending habits got too ingrained.
Makes sense, proactive.
And when she looked back, she realized her whole approach this time was totally different from earlier attempts, like back in 2019, apparently.
Oh, interesting. So she tried this before.
Yeah. And comparing the two attempts really highlights how her thinking matured.
Okay, so what was that 2019 approach like? Because I think a lot of people, when they try to change a habit, they fall into this trap.
Totally. Back then, the sources say she saw these challenges almost purely as self-punishment. They were driven by guilt, frustration over past shopping habits, maybe feeling bad about her finances. The whole internal narrative was negative.
Like, I messed up, so now I have to suffer through this strict budget.
Exactly, that kind of vibe. Penalizing herself for past mistakes, trying to force herself to be good.
Which, as we know, rarely lasts. It's built on shame. You just wait until the guilt fades, then bounce back.
Precisely. So now, fast forward to this challenge, completely different foundation. She consciously chose compassion and gentle accountability.
Gentle accountability. Okay.
Instead of that harsh self-criticism, she literally wanted to stop parenting herself harshly into obedience.
That phrase really jumps out.
It does, doesn't it? Because it changes the whole emotional tone of the challenge.
Okay, but let me push on that a bit. Because, for some people, isn't that fear, that guilt, the only thing that makes them stick to something? Isn't there a risk that gentle accountability just becomes, well, letting yourself off the hook?
That's a really fair question. How do you stop compassion becoming permission to just give up?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to see discipline differently. It's not just about restricting things. It's about directing your resources, your time, money, energy, where you actually want them to go, intentionally.
Okay.
When the motivation is guilt or punishment, your brain kind of fights back, doesn't it? You get that ego depletion, willpower runs dry.
Oh, what the hell effect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I slipped up once, might as well go all out now. The brain sees it as just temporary pain to be endured.
So being too rigid actually makes you rebel against yourself.
Pretty much. Whereas compassion, maybe counterintuitively, makes it sustainable. It builds self-trust.
How so?
Because with gentle accountability, Christina wasn't fighting some internal dictator. She was guiding herself like a trusted partner. And the sources explicitly say this approach made it her most peaceful and effortless no-buy yet. That feeling of effortless comes because you've removed the internal battle, the shame.
Right. You're not wasting energy fighting yourself. The energy goes into the actual change.
That's the key insight, I think. Removing the psychological cost of that internal war makes the whole thing feel lighter, more possible.
So for you listening, the takeaway here is maybe get. If you try to force change through just depriving yourself, you'll probably hit a wall because deprivation always feels temporary.
Yeah, it implies you'll go back to normal eventually.
Yeah.
But real lasting change comes from self-respect, building habits because you actually value your future self.
Not because you hate your past self.
Exactly. It's about being kind enough to yourself to keep going.
That reframing is, yeah, it's powerful. Okay, so that's the psychological foundation, but let's get practical. Mindset is one thing, but facing actual temptation is another.
Oh, yeah.
The sources said the first 2 weeks were still tough, even with the gentle approach.
Definitely. That's when those old habits, those triggers, are firing like crazy. She mentioned battling the urge for the boredom shot.
The boredom shop, we all know that one.
Yeah, it's not about needing something. It's about filling a void, right? Restlessness. You just want something, a little hit.
And where do we usually go to fill that void these days?
The screen.
Yep.
She specifically mentioned having to fight the habit of just aimlessly scrolling TikTok.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, is basically a direct pipeline to spending money.
Oh, totally. Every other video is a haul or a must-have. It's designed for impulse.
Right. Highly curated ads disguised as normal content, triggering little dopamine hits with every swipe. So just putting the phone down, breaking that cycle, that was the first real hurdle.
We've all been down that rabbit hole. One click leads to an hour of filling a shopping cart you didn't even know you wanted. But then came a really specific high-stakes test. A real FOMO moment.
Yeah, this was apparently quite defining. Right at the start of January, her absolute favorite brand, Tibi, launched a massive sale.
Oof. Okay, if you're trying not to buy things, a huge sale from your favorite brand is basically peak temptation.
It's maximum pressure. It plays right into that scarcity mindset. Buy now or lose out forever.
So how did the gentle accountability handle that? Did she just, block their emails and pretend it wasn't happening?
No, it was more cognitive. A reframing based on that compassionate perspective she was cultivating.
Yeah, okay.
She actively told herself this truth. There will always be something to want.
Simple, but powerful.
Right. Missing this one sale wouldn't be catastrophic. Life would go on. It acknowledges that desire itself is kind of endless, but your action on it doesn't have to be immediate. It just deflated the urgency.
Takes the power away from the sale itself.
Exactly. And then, this is the really cool part.
Yeah.
The universe, or maybe just the retail cycle, gave her this amazing validation.
What happened?
Those exact same items she resisted buying in the January sale, they were discounted even more a few weeks later in February.
Yeah.
Up to 20% cheaper.
No way. That's incredible.
Talk about proof of concept. It just cemented the lesson for her, didn't it? That panic of buy now or regret it is often just manufactured. Patience literally paid off.
Wow. That instantly makes every future limited time offer seem less threatening, doesn't it?
Completely defangs it. You know, there'll always be another sale, maybe even a better one.
Okay, so resisting temptation is crucial. But you also need to fill the gap, right? All that time and energy you used to spend browsing or shopping, it has to go somewhere.
Absolutely. You can't just leave a void. You need positive replacements.
So what did Christina do? What were her replacement activities?
She seemed to focus a lot on physical activity and home organization, things that engaged her differently.
Okay.
The sources mention her doing Pilates daily,
Yeah.
specifically using Move with Nicole videos.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I know those. Very accessible.
Yeah, and that seems key. It wasn't about some grueling new fitness regime. It was consistent, gentle movement, kind of mirroring that gentle accountability mindset physically.
Makes sense. And she used an app, too.
Yeah, her Copilot fitness app for consistent daily workouts. So structure and external prompting.
So she was swapping the sort of passive, maybe addictive dopamine from scrolling for the more earned, structured satisfaction of exercise, active self-improvement instead of passive consumption.
Well put. And the other big thing was reorganizing her wardrobe, her home.
Why is that so effective, do you think?
Well, when you actually handle everything you own, you're forced to see the sheer volume of it.
Yeah. Confronting the stash.
Exactly. And appreciate the value in what's already there. It directly counters that feeling of, I need something new to feel good. She was basically rediscovering her own assets, chopping her own closet, kind of.
Smart. And she used a mental trick, too, right? The wish listing thing.
Ah, yes, the wish list. Classic technique, but really effective.
How does that work psychologically?
It tackles what economists call time inconsistency. In the moment you see something you want, the desire is massive. Your brain tells you, this is it. This will make everything better right now.
The impulse peak.
Right. Putting it on a wish list does two things. One, it acknowledges the desire. You're not trying to pretend you don't want it, which just creates tension.
Okay.
But two, it separates the desire from the immediate action of buying. You tell yourself, okay, I want this, I'll put it here and think about it later.
Creates that crucial delay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what usually happens during that cooling off period.
The impulse fades. You realize you didn't need it that badly after all.
Precisely. Most items on the list just don't survive the wait. The urgency was illusory.
That separation, acknowledging the feeling but delaying the action, that seems like the core mechanism for breaking the impulse cycle.
I think it really is. It's mindful delay.
Okay, so let's get into section 3, the boundaries. Because this wasn't a total spending freeze, was it? She called it gentle.
Right. And understanding the exceptions she did allow is key to understanding her values and why this felt sustainable, not like deprivation.
So she allowed spending, if it was. What was the criteria?
Necessary and meaningful, and aligned with her values, not just impulse.
Okay, let's look at the specifics. The numbers are quite revealing.
Yeah, they paint a picture. There were small, budgeted allowances for quality-of-life things, like $72 for takeout sushi one time.
Okay, treat.
And $107 for getting her nails done. Again, specific, planned self-care, not random splurges.
Right. And essential maintenance was allowed too.
$187 for essential hair care replacements, stuff that had actually run out and needed replacing, not just wanting a new product.
So necessary items.
Okay.
But then there was one really big expense.
Yes, the big one. $951.
Which was for?
Renewing her pharmacist license.
Oh, okay, that's significant and important context.
Absolutely critical context, including that massive mandatory professional expense, shows exactly what this challenge wasn't about.
Right. It wasn't about cutting corners on essentials or things vital to her career.
Not at all. The no-buy was focused purely on discretionary spending. The lifestyle stuff, the fun buys, the boredom buys. It wasn't about jeopardizing her professional standing or income.
That grounds it in reality, doesn't it? It shows it was about behavioral change, not desperation. Protecting her ability to earn was clearly the top priority.
Which is fundamentally responsible. The rules served her goals, not the other way around.
Makes sense. She also allowed little things like coffee sometimes, maybe a fitness class here and there.
Yeah, small amounts. Recognizing that absolute rigid denial often leads to breaking point. A bit of flexibility prevents the dam from bursting.
Okay, but then there was this other purchase. Not essential, not professional, not a small treat. The style book.
Yes, the $238 for The Creative Pragmatist by Amy Smelovich.
That seems like a gray area. Why was that okay when, say, buying a new blouse wasn't?
This is where her values alignment rule really comes into play.
How did she justify it?
She framed it as an educational resource, not just another consumer item.
An investment.
Kind of. Amy Smelovich's whole philosophy is about building a very intentional, long-lasting, high-quality wardrobe. It's the opposite of fast fashion impulse buying.
So, buying the book was seen as investing in the knowledge to buy less and more intentionally in the future.
Exactly. It served her longer-term goal of developing a more mature, sustainable approach to style, rather than just giving her another fleeting item.
It's like buying the fishing pole instead of just one fish.
That's a great analogy. Investing in the skill, the philosophy.
Okay, that rigorous boundary setting, thinking through each purchase like that, it clearly led somewhere psychologically.
It really did. By week 3, which was around her birthday, actually, she described feeling like she'd reached a state of calm detachment.
Calm detachment. Let's unpack that phrase. What does that feel like in terms of consumerism? Is it just not wanting things anymore?
Not quite. It's not necessarily that the desire disappears completely. It's more that the emotional distance between feeling the desire and feeling the compulsion to act on it grows significantly.
Okay, so you can see something nice, acknowledge it's nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful sweater.
Without immediately feeling that internal pressure, that anxiety, that itch to acquire it.
Exactly. The desire is there, maybe, but it's lost its power. It doesn't dictate your behavior anymore. She said she just wasn't caught up in that internal drama of should I buy it, shouldn't I buy it anymore.
And this state was directly linked back to the gentle approach, right? Quieting that inner critic.
Absolutely. It all connects back. Remember the 2019 approach? Resisting by telling herself wanting things is stupid.
Yeah, which just creates shame.
Right. The new evolved self-talk was different. It saw desire as natural, not something to be ashamed of. The internal script shifted from that harsh, restrictive, you can't have this,
Which just invites rebellion.
to the much more empowering, trusting, you'll revisit this later.
That's such a key difference. You can't, as a brick wall, you'll revisit is a pause button. It implies future choice, future rationality, agency.
And crucially, it builds self-trust. When you actually follow through on that gentle discipline, you put it on the list, you revisit it later, and often you find the desire has faded. You teach your brain that you're reliable, that you can trust yourself.
And that self-trust, that's the foundation for making it last, isn't it? It replaces the need for sheer willpower because the internal fight is gone.
Precisely. That shift from willpower to self-trust, fueled by compassion, that feels like the biggest revelation here.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've gone through the journey. What are the main actionable lessons that Christina identified? The key takeaways for us.
She distilled it down to 5 core lessons, really. The first couple focus on that foundational mindset piece.
Okay, lesson 1, mindset outweighs rules.
Yeah. The challenge proved that just having strict rules isn't enough. They can be brittle. What really mattered was her self-awareness, her intentionality. Negotiating kindly with herself worked better than dictating harshly.
Makes sense. And lesson 2, delay gratification, don't deny it.
This is the practical side of calm detachment and using the wish list. Postponing purchases, even just for 30 days, gives you that vital perspective. It's not about saying never, it's about realizing most impulse buys don't stand the test of time. It teaches patience. Discipline through perspective.
Okay, lessons 3 and 4 are more about the doing, managing time, and resisting market pressures.
Right. Lesson 3. Replace old habits with meaningful activities.
We saw that with the Pilates, the organizing.
Exactly. Shopping often fills a void: boredom, anxiety.
Yeah.
You have to consciously fill that time and energy with something else positive and engaging. Active creation or self-care instead of passive consumption.
And lesson 4, detach from urgency.
This came straight from that Tibby sale experience, didn't it?
Yeah.
Internalizing that sales, trends, limited editions. That urgency is mostly a marketing tactic.
Right, FOMO is manufactured.
Believing that good deals, or even better things will come along later, removes that panic button. It takes the power back.
Okay, and the final lesson circles back to the very beginning.
Yeah, the driving force behind it all. Lesson 5, approach yourself with kindness.
The compassion piece.
It's the thread connecting everything. Lasting change, she found, didn't come from beating herself up. It came from respecting her own journey, her own growth, treating herself gently, allowing necessary spending, framing things positively. That built the self-trust needed for real, sustainable change in her relationship with money.
And the outcome, her final reflections really summed it up, didn't they?
Yeah, she called it the most relaxed and rewarding no-buy she'd ever done. Rewarding not in spite of the limitations, but because of the way she handled it. The gentle discipline, the rediscovery of gratitude for what she already had.
From her skills to her stuff.
Right. What she ultimately gained wasn't just the money saved, though that was probably nice too. It was this feeling of internal control, freedom from the compulsion to buy.
So what felt like restriction at first actually became freedom?
The freedom to choose rather than feeling obligated to acquire. That's a profound shift.
So for you listening, what's the bottom line here? This deep dive, I think, really shows that finding balance with consumerism is maybe less about brute force willpower.
Which always runs out eventually.
Right. And much more about how you frame it psychologically.
No.
I mean, Christina had already done the incredibly hard work of paying off $120,000. But her biggest insight came after that, from this relatively small, intentional challenge.
It suggests that real financial freedom isn't just about being debt-free. It's about being free from compulsion.
Yeah.
And it shows you can change that relationship with money and desire by choosing intentionality and self-compassion over just harsh rules.
Which leads us to that final thought, something for you to maybe chew on.
Yeah. If genuine freedom, in this case from compulsive spending, was found by swapping self-punishment for self-compassion, where else in your life might that apply?
Beyond shopping, beyond money.
What other areas might benefit from trading that harsh inner critic for a bit more? Gentle accountability. Where could kindness, instead of guilt, unlock the next level of growth for you?